Hello, I am Covington, licensed marriage and family therapist. I have the privilege of working with families and individuals in three areas of their life: education or training. And so today I want to talk about workplace bullying. Some individuals know this term as harassment at work, but when you look at harassment at work, you're typically talking about sexual harassment. Most individuals take their bosses or their supervisors' behavior, such as demeaning or triangulation, is another tactic that's used at work when an individual wants to bully. It's no different from the bullying that takes place within the within your household. Now, within your with your children and with what they face at school. Is that you have the typical dominant person. It doesn't have to be a dominant personality type, just an individual that is aggressive. And that's what I mean by dominant, or passive aggressive. That's one thing that's overlooked when a person is really nice, but they're mean and they talk nasty to individuals. And what I mean by talking nasty is they say things can possibly embarrass the person. Like, oh, you think you know that? And it sounds like it's a cool way of just making light of a situation. But if there's already tension in the relationship with that supervisor saying that to you, it could be considered harassment or bullying. And so I don't want to get away from the idea that bullying is bullying, because it is. But when we're in the workplace, individuals look at bullying as if, oh no, this is something that I have to do to protect my child. I have to work. I have to make a living. I have to do what the boss wants me to do, because if I don't, then I'm not going to be able to have a paycheck so that I can take care of my kids. One of the things they neglect is all of the stress that they carry over from work plays into what goes on in the home. For instance, you're stressed out because your boss set some paperwork on your desk and said they wanted it finished by the end of the day, or you got a new assignment, or you got a new TA, or whatever that situation is that causes a tense in your body. And they tell you that they want it done by Friday. Let's say today is Wednesday, because it is. And so you already have your assignments all planned out for the week. You have what task you're going to complete for the rest of the week. And they add this extra assignment that gives you the trigger response of fight or flight, right? And so you may not have the verbal skills to communicate, hey, I have something to do. You may be of the mindset that says, okay, I want to please my boss. I'm going to get this done, although I am taking on all of this stress. Although this is a very stressful situation for me, although I already had plans, I'm going to move back everything I plan to do so that I can do the boss's work. So you leave for that day and you go home. You are complaining about the decision that you just made to be silent in regards to your workload for the rest of the week, and also to, verbalize, no, I can't do this now. And that was a choice that you made. And so you're beating yourself up for that. And then you go home and you berate whomever lives in that house with you. If you live by yourself, you will stress about it, you will ponder about it, and you would say, I can't stand my boss. And so you'll start creating this narrative about how much you don't like the boss and how unfair the boss is to you, and how you're never able to catch up with anything because something always comes up. Now, because we're talking about bullying, your supervisor, your boss, your union rep, or whomever it is, they may not realize that you have all of this assignment on you, and they may not be intentionally giving you a hard time, but it's because it's happened so much. It's become an issue for you and a habit for them to give you work at the last minute. Now, because of your response, because of the way you're interpreting it, you feel like it's harassment or a form of bullying. And so one of the things you have to do is, if you're going to continue to do work to please the boss, you have to set in a time for extra task. Like if you know that your boss consistently gives you work at the last minute, if you want to be proactive about it and if you want to please the boss, one of the things you can do is you could set in your schedule, this is time set across for the boss. And I'm even thinking about how teachers can do this as well. You can set aside a portion of your prep time, before care time, after care time. You can set aside some time so that you're able to have what your boss wants for you to do. Another thing you can do to be proactive is you can go to them at the beginning of the week. Well, my preference is Friday of the week before. And that's because I used to do my schedule Friday night at the end of my workday so that I can know what I had to do on Monday. And if I needed to call to make any appointments, I'll schedule them in for that day for the following week. And I'll just book my schedule around that. And so if I need to talk to my supervisor or my boss to ask them, is there any work that they need for me to do? I can put it in at that time. Even as a daycare worker, if you know that your the head of the daycare is always giving you a hard time and they're always giving you things to do at the last minute, it's that feeling, it's that trigger response. And sometimes they do it intentionally, and I'm going to address that. But I'm talking about the unintentional consequences of having someone always giving you work at the last minute, because they may think you're a dependable person. They may see how you always get the work done. They don't see the stress that it puts you through as you're getting the work done. And so if you're going to be proactive, those are the two things I would recommend. I would recommend going to them and asking them ahead of time if they have something for you to put on the calendar, because you're planning your week out. The other thing you can do is just set aside some time, like this is time for an extra project, or this is time for when my boss gives me that extra assignment. So you can set that off. Now, when the bullying is intentional, it's a similar feeling because it causes you to tense up in your body. It makes you think about the situation and relive the narrative over and over and over again, long after the moment has passed. And so if you're going to combat this type of bullying, this type of harassment, this intentional harassment, for instance, I had a female supervisor. She wasn't my supervisor. She was a colleague of my supervisor, but she was high in rank in the organization. And so she will see me and I will have on an outfit, whether it's a pair of slacks and a blouse or a A-line skirt and a blouse and some heels. She would make it a point to come to me and say, you sure look nice. Those look like club pants. And my response to her on this one particular occasion was, I wouldn't wear this to the club. And she said, oh, it's a club fit. And then another time I wore a dress. It was a long flowing dress and I had a tank that was designer. And then I had a jacket over it. And she came over and she said something to me. The third time, I was in my car about to go to the bank because they gave us paper checks at the time. And so I was about to go to my bank to deposit the check that I just received from working. She was inside. She ran out to the car. I had on some knee-length shorts. They were slacks. It was a name brand. And I had on a shirt. It was a collar shirt and a button down. And I had on some sandals, and that's not typical for some of the things that the women wear at the job. I'm always fully covered. I don't show cleavage. She ran out to the car and she touched my shorts, and she said, "Don't wear these anymore." And so I was baffled because I see some of my colleagues wearing tights or yoga pants to work. I've seen my colleagues wear crop tops to work with just a sweater or a jacket to hang it, but all their belly showing. I've seen my colleagues wear low cut where their cleavage was exposed. And I went and I asked them, had anyone said anything to them about it? And unanimously, they said no. So I went to my supervisor and I said to him, I said, "Hey, look, if such and such says one more thing to me about the clothes that I wear, you guys are going to give me a clothing allowance." And so he said, "We can't do that." And I said, "Well, you need to tell her she had better not say anything else about the way I dress." I said, "It's bad enough I change 2, 3, and 4 times to make sure my shape isn't showing too much, but I can't do much about it because I'm in shape." And so that anything she have against me, that's her challenge. And so he kind of like sat back and laughed, but she never said anything else to me about it. And I've experienced another type of harassment with one of my supervisors. And she said to me, "Oh, it must feel good to have 2 masters. I don't even have one." And I said, "Well, that's your choice." And so she started to tell me about how pretty she was and how much men love Filipino women, or Black men love Filipino women. Now, she was half Black, half Filipino, and she was like, "Well, I got the best of both worlds." Now, she is my supervisor. I did just start with the company. I'm just getting to know her, and I'm trying to figure out how to have a conversation where I have to supervise up and tell this lady, "Okay, look, this conversation right here isn't going to happen anymore." And so one of the things that made me so straightforward when I'm encountering things like that, because I've encountered harassment and attempts at bullying in all of my jobs. And so I see it happening to other people as well. But one of the things I do, and I always recommend that individuals do it, first thing I do is I read all of the policies and procedures and the handbook for any company I've ever been with. I read them. I highlight what's relevant to me in the immediate, and I highlight what might be relevant to me. And that what might be relevant to me is vacation time and sick time and bereavement leave. I need to know what those are because I was staying away from the bulk of my family, and I needed to know how I would proceed if anything were to happen. I needed to take bereavement leave. I needed to know what was the process, what was allowed. I needed to know that. And so I also looked at the whistleblowers. I also looked at harassment. Like I would look at anything that the job had, and I would highlight it, and I kept it at my desk. At one point, I would read it once a year just to stay fresh. I would always get the updates and add them to my binder because I needed it, right? And so as we as as things moved on, whenever I encountered a situation, I had the wherewithal to go to what I read in the policies and procedures. I feel like I want to stand up. I had the wherewithal to go to the policies and procedures so that I could know how to proceed. And so one of the things it talks about is like following the chain of command. And so about 2 years ago, I had a situation with the supervisor and it got really bad. And so one of the things I did was I started documenting. I documented the first instant of the bullying that I received a reaction from. She had been doing this since she started. She would say slight things. She would say underhanding things. She would do underhanding things. And I noticed it, and people around me noticed it. But it didn't affect me because I assumed she was like everybody else and that I can deal with her. And so when I had my first reaction toward her, where I wanted to either fight or flight, remove myself, I immediately went and wrote a letter to HR, and I dictated what happened in that meeting, what was said to the best of my knowledge. And so that was my first instance of a paper trail. And so I had HR respond, and they were asking me if they wanted to intervene. And I told them no. I didn't want them to intervene because I needed to make sure I exhausted all of my, I had to make sure I exhausted all of my, what I can do within my grasp. And so the next step was I went to the program director and I asked the program director, hey, can you help me with this issue? And what the program director, what she did was she became defensive and she started saying, well, do you know that this is her first time being a supervisor? Well, do you know, la, 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 la. And I said, I don't care if this is her first time being a supervisor. That's not my problem. You guys need to train her. And so after that, still nothing. I wrote a letter to the compliance department and I let them know. And so still nothing was going on. So I finally wrote a letter to the CEO of the company. I sent the letter to HR again, but I'm skipping steps because I don't want to get into the details. But I wrote a letter to the CEO and I said, hey, this is what's going on. These are the steps that I followed. If I don't have a resolution, my next letter would go to the board of directors. I signed it with my name and my signature and a smile because I knew that I advocated for myself. I knew that I took up for myself. I knew that I was going through an episode of workplace bullying and I had to address it in a classy manner. So when we finally got to the mediation part, the company offered me a severance package and they were like, well, you were planning to leave anyway. And so they said, well, let me think about it. They said, we'll give you some time to think about it. And so I said, okay. So what I did was I went and I prayed and I asked some women from church to pray for me. And I prayed over myself because I totally believe that we are endowed and empowered by the Spirit of God to pray over our own situations. And so I take initiative and I take pride in the fact that I can go to Christ on my own because of what Jesus Christ did on the cross. And so I went to the foot of the cross and I prayed about it. And so when I got to work the next Monday, I already knew what my answer was, but I needed to make sure it was grounded. Now, different individuals may have a different technique of dealing with how do you go into prayer or meditation or get grounded when you need to make a major decision. And so when I went to them, I said, so they offered me the severance package. And I said, why do I have to leave for reporting workplace bullying? And their faces dropped. Like they didn't expect me to say that. And it was funny to me because the same women in the room were the same women that sat on the safety committee with me and the same women that sat on the compliance committee with me. One of the things that I did was I got on any committee that I can to help me learn and get closer to the individuals that were making decisions. And so I was always in the room. I was on the safety committee. I was on the committee where the CEOs met with one representative from each department. I was in those meetings. I was on the compliance team. If they needed me to look over a document and ask questions, like I looked over our safety procedures and I noticed a few things were off. So I would always put myself in a position where I was where the decision makers were. And so when I said that, and I'm thinking, I'm like, these are the same women I've served with, and they are believing this one person about my character that they had never experienced, but it just so happened I was going through it with this individual. And so I said, no. And so they said, well, we're going to write up a plan. And I said, you can write up a plan. I don't agree to it, so I'm not signing it. And so they asked me, why not? And so I wrote down, I said, I do not agree with what's in the statement and I'm not signing it. So that they can put it in my file. And so there are ways, so that's the process that I went through when I was going through workplace bullying. And because I know the stress that it puts on you and your family when you're experiencing trauma at work, when you're experiencing hardships at work, when you're experiencing the negative effect of someone taking, what's the word I'm looking for? Someone taking for granted their position to serve you in the capacity of a leader. When they're taking that for granted, it puts stress on you. And a lot of the times it's the direct service workers or low income wage earners. And those are the individuals that I talk to the most and I feel for the most. And I have a great capacity of compassion for individuals that are low wage earners and are coming to work every day that might not have had the initiative to go out and apply for a management position, or they've been turned down because they are part of a marginalized people group. It still happens. And so with me and this girl, we were around the same age. She didn't know that. And we were both Black. And so the program director was a white woman. And when I went to her and asked her, she was kind of hands off, like, you guys resolve it. And when I was in my mediation, I said, well, this is what I think happened. I think that the white woman said, oh, that's two black women in a confrontation. Let them duke it out. And I told them that that's what I really believe happened. And so they were really, really shocked at some of the things that I was saying and some of the ways I was advocating for myself. And I told them, I said, look, if I'm advocating for my families that I support, I'm going to definitely advocate for myself. And so that's what I'm saying to you. If you are supporting your family, if you will go up to your child's school and advocate for them, if you will advocate to save your family, advocate for yourself. There is no reason you should be experiencing bullying at work. And I did a training once, well, more than once. I had a training series called Grab the Bull by the Horn. And it was meant for kids, but adults do the same thing. They do the triangulation, they do the isolation, they do the name calling, they do the micro and the macro aggressions, and they don't even realize that they're doing it. And when you call them on it, they're offended because they think, well, I'm not a bully because you're not hitting them and you're not on the playground. No, you don't. Your bullying is not isolated to where you are geographically. No. Bullying is based on the behavior that you exhibit and how you treat people. That's what determines bullying. And so when you encounter intentional or unintentional bullying, with intentional bullying, just be more proactive. If you don't feel like your boss is demeaning you, if you don't feel like they're trying to embarrass you, if you don't feel like they're not taking you for granted, if you don't feel like they're doing any of those things, but with them giving you extra work, with them putting a lot of workload on you and not increasing your pay, like that can cause genuine stress. And if you're not ready to have the conversation with them about pay, at least have the conversation about, hey, I'm planning my schedule. Is there anything that you would like for me to get done next week? Or I'm planning my schedule. I've set aside some time just in case you have something for me at the last minute. That's being proactive. You already have it planned in, so you don't have to relive the trauma of saying, "Oh man, they always picking on me," or "Oh man, they're always giving me what, like they're always asking me to do everything." But when it's intentional bullying, it's you have to be strategic. Being proactive isn't gonna really help with that because it's already in the process and it's ongoing. And so you have to be strategic. And that comes with documenting. Same thing they tell you, if you've been sexually harassed, document it. Write down the time, write down the place, write down who is around, and write down what happened and save that. You can put it in, I keep everything in email form or in a notebook, but it's in a place that I could gain access to it. My thing was to chart it and send it to HR immediately so that they can start just collecting information or putting it in my file. But that's just the route I chose to take. The other thing you have to do is follow the chain of commands. Don't give them a reason to say, well, did you do this or did you do that? You want to say yes. So when they start asking you, if you try to work it out with your supervisor, if you try to work it out with your time, if you've tried to do this, they're going to ask you, what is it that you've done? And you want to be able to tell them, I've done this, this, and this, so that you'd be able to go to the next step without glitch. The other thing is, don't take counsel from yourself. Talk to someone else about it, because it's very stressful trying to make a decision about a stressful situation and a stressful mindset. And so you want to talk it through with other people. You want to let them know what's going on with you, and then give them all the information that you have available to you. If you trust them enough to say, hey, can I talk to you about something? Give them the information, because sometimes we give here and we give there, like we give a little bit without even without even giving them all the information. And so they're providing us feedback based on a very small amount of information, and you want to make a decision with that type of feedback. Mm-mm. You don't have to tell them everything, but give them enough information so that they could talk you through what's going on and help you think through this process for yourself and decide what you want to do next. And then the other thing is, go boldly. When you go into those meetings, don't shy down because you feel like you're a direct service worker, if you feel like you're not in management, if you feel like the person above you can have your job or have you fired. Just go boldly. And then one more thing. So with the supervisor, I was just talking about that happened about 2 years ago. She would like talk to the supervisors about me. Now, I've had experiences with these supervisors and they've never experienced me in this manner, and they didn't come to me. And I told them, I said, I don't trust you. I said, we've had these type of relationships for so long. And when this one person comes in, now you're telling me that you have a problem with me, and I have a problem with that. And so I told them, when I wrote one of my letters, I said, well, since such and such is going to use her privilege as a supervisor, because they were always talking about white and Black privilege. And I think that everyone has privilege. And so I said, if she's going to use her privilege as a supervisor to talk about me, I'm going to use my privilege as an employee to dictate and write about what happened. And so I gave them a narrative, and I've been doing it since then. Anytime I have a problem with anyone, I'll make an attempt to go and address it. If it looks as if it cannot be resolved, and this is a biblical principle, if you go to them, if they can't, but if there's a way that things can be reconciled, bring another brother in, bring another sister in, bring someone in that can help you through this process. And so that's what I do. So I hope this was helpful. Again, my name is Arkila Covington. I have the privilege of working with families and individuals in 3 areas of their lives, with their relationship with themselves, their relationship with others, and their relationship in their vocation. Thank you very much for supporting me. And thank you for listening to this web series.